Hey everybody, this is Perch, and just like I did with Marvel and Strange Academy, I wanted to throw out another book that I typically enjoy. I think it's a really solid read, particularly if you fit into this category. If you've been reading comics for decades and you appreciate kind of the more traditional storytelling, the storytelling where there is a story, where they actually prioritize some level of action, some level of history of the characters. And it has that more classic contemporary feel. Bear in mind, I hate describing it that way. I hate describing this as that classic comic book feel, because in many cases, I think what makes these stories good for me is not a classic storytelling type, but just good, solid writing. And there's kind of two books. So what I did was I just looked at the books that I read first. I go out of my way to make sure that I check out right away when they come out. And with DC, they're putting out a number of books. I've talked about Action Comics. There's three I'm going to mention here from DC that tend to, when they come out, I prioritize reading them right off the bat because I know generally I'm probably going to enjoy the story and it's going to be good. Now, what's the common denominator between these three stories? Well, one's a little bit of an outlier, but the first two are absolutely telling a long form story. They're not trying to get by on 5 issues. It's not a hey, let's figure out a way to make this relatively new character look good, and we're going to try and cram that into a limited series, which is where a lot of both Marvel and DC's books are at right now. They're trying to, what's the shortest possible route to give this person kind of a heroic moment, but we're not even sure what a heroic moment is. So they're taking their time and building things up. So one is Philip Kennedy Johnson's Action Comics. I think this is telling a really solid story. The backup stories, if anything, are slightly, just distracting for me. But this is Philip Kennedy Johnson. It's Riccardo Federici on the art, and Lee Lowridge is doing the coloring. And in this case, with this book, it's got just a beautiful look and feel. This is a storyline of Superman is trapped on Warworld. He's fighting Mongol. And he's doing some very, very different things. It's Superman. He's been torn down a bit. It's Gladiator. It's a good, long story that's being told, and it's telling it very well. We're getting a lot of the nature of Superman, both as a protector, both as somebody who is, could certainly take an easier route to save some of the people, but instead he's swinging for the fences and trying to save all the people. And I think Philip Kennedy Johnson's just doing a hell of a good job here. I like his book. I like his story. I like the art. I like the mood. I think the coloring is doing a wonderful job of a lot of blues, a lot of greens, a lot of reds. This world feels very, very different. And this is the last god level of storytelling. Things to nitpick here. The covers often vaguely, barely to do not reflect the interiors and what's going on, and even the art style is usually dramatically different. And I think they'd sell more books, quite frankly, if they utilize the interior artist as a cover artist, because I think that style is pretty distinctive, pretty dramatic. It would stand out more than what they're currently doing. But anyway, that's a book I always go to on DC side. So this is a DC-centric list. The second one is The Flash. So The Flash with Wally West, this is probably the best book as an example of you could, if this book was coming out in 1989 or 1995, it would fit right in. It's got, and I mean that as a positive. It's got a very classic storytelling style. It's big on heart. It's big on family. It is telling adventures in multi-part arcs. They just finished one that deals with Eclipso, and it's tying in Justice League Dark and Gem World. This isn't the deepest story. It's not like this comic is somehow massively complex. It's telling something relatively straightforward, but it does it well. This is by Jeremy Adams, and then there's been a bit of a rotating cast of Fernando Bessarian is on art. Matt Ryan has come in to do some. We've had Brent Peoples on there. This comic is absolutely It looks and it feels like a superhero comic from the past. So again, if you're sitting here, you're going, I miss the old style of storytelling. I really like DC Comics in the 90s. This is a book for you. It's going to feel like it. It's going to have the same level of kind of storytelling and pacing. If you're a fan of Wally West, it's absolutely going to be there. The dialogue, everything kind of fits that aesthetic, and it's good it's good that they're putting out something out there that looks like that. Story's been relatively solid. Again, it's nothing where I think you're going to look back at this, 20 years from now and consider this epic run. Although you might, it is if it is allowed to continue and build up, then I think it's going to land in a pretty solid place in terms of just kind of the quality of the storytelling and everything else that's going on. This Justice League's Dark storyline they gave it some time. It had a lot of elements that were kind of new to the Flash, and it allowed him to team up with John Constantine and Dr. Fate and Detective Chimp and some characters you don't normally see him with, and it was good. It was just good, solid, classic storytelling. I've enjoyed it. I think the battle with Eclipso's a little new, so it's giving him some different things to do. So art's solid, definitely has a feeling of a 80s 90s comic. Pretty solid stuff. The last one I'll mention, although there's a couple of kind of options here. I think Robin has been relatively solid. That's been a fun read at times with what it's trying to do. Robin probably feels the most like a it's kind of this hybrid of they're trying to tell a bit of a classic story, but it definitely has the feel of it's okay. I don't think it's flawless by any stretch of the imagination, but it's fine. I think it's can be a solid read if you're into Damian and kind of that character. Some of the other stuff we're doing, Pennyworth is not a bad book. Basket Full of Heads and now Refrigerator Full of Heads has been a fun little book coming out of DC. There's been a variety of things in there that are worth seeing. Obviously, Superman 78 was a lot of fun. I still wish, despite all the attention that the Suicide Squad has gotten, they've suffered a little bit. I like the DC versus Vampires. I haven't liked the Dark Knights of Steel as much. I do think the early issues, at least from what we've seen of the some of the Batman stuff, is not bad. I read the Tom King Batman Killing Time. It's okay. It's a shame in many ways, because if this was the story that Tom King had just written in his original run, then you would have had probably a well-loved run from start to finish. Instead, had to kind of veer off to the side. But the last comic that I really wanted to highlight here is The Nice House on the Lake. Now, I said this was going to be the outlier of the three, but this is a comic that I pick up right away. This is by James Tynion. It's a 12-issue series. Alvaro Martinez Bueno doing the art. Once again, the coloring is pretty dramatic here, and so there's definitely a shout out to Jordi Belair, who's doing the coloring. But this book is a solid book. Now, this is a horror book. It's a sci-fi book. This book is absolutely better to read in batches. So I was reading it individually as a floppy. It was okay, and then I went back and read the first 6 issues all in one, and it played far better. This is going to be a book that in trade is going to be pretty interesting. But there's some interesting mysteries here. It feels a little bit like it's born to be an HBO series at some point. Whether they do that or not, I don't know. But definitely there's some interesting horror here. There's some interesting sci-fi. I think this nets out to be more of a sci-fi book than a horror book when all is said and done. But it's engaging. It's something different. I think so what I tried to do here is these are the books that I pick up right away and I check out. Action Comics is telling a very different, what feels like epic Superman story, which I really, really appreciate and I enjoy. The Nice House on the Lake is telling a bit of a horror / sci-fi, something different. And The Flash is telling a very classic DC story. All three are worth it. There's some good money out there. I've liked One Star Squadron and Blue and Gold, by the way, as well, that they're coming out. I think those have been pretty fun books. Actually, the Detective Comics run, as I mentioned before, that Mariko Tamaki is doing is pretty solid. It's clocking along. I'm also it's too early to say just yet, but this Arkham City series has definitely some potential. It's interesting. The sixth issue just came out. I full disclosure, I haven't read it, so I've read the first five, and I'm waiting to get to this fifth one. But there's some interesting stuff that's gone on there too. Not exactly my thing, but again, it's different. It's the reason why I wanted to do this is certainly to shine a little bit of some positive stuff of comics I'm actually enjoying, but also to point out that, while people may be focusing on the cringy, weird stuff. I mean, Justice League is for the third time in a row trying to prove that Naomi is the most popular and powerful character in the entire DC universe. Why are they doing this? I don't know. Justice League Incarnate is marching its way toward yet another crisis event, which seems a little tiring. Several of these other books are just kind of there. They're being put out, but like the Titans Academy and Suicide Squad and some of these books just feel like a struggle. Tom King is busy trying to tear down another character in Human Target. They're different tastes for sure, but those books I think work for me, and those are my reasons why. So hopefully that's helpful to you as you're trying to figure out comics to read and buy. But let me know what you're enjoying out of DC. I'm moving to indies next. We went to Image, and we're going to keep our way going with some books that I think are pretty solid. And this is all probably going to lead to a feature of like, these are the comics of the month that gave me the best read. And, why not? Something a little different. Let me know what you think in the comments below of the comics you're reading and you're enjoying. And thanks for listening.